What is up, my fellow wizards, and welcome to another episode of Building EDH. Today we are talking about Chatterfang, Squirrel General, 3-drop with Forest Walk. If one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus that many 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens are created instead. You can pay a black to sacrifice X squirrels. Target creature will get +X, -X until end of turn. So this deck obviously wants to build a lot of tokens very fast, but it also has a bit of a storm mechanic to it, a little bit of life gain, life drain, a little bit of everything. So I'm going to start off with the combos in the deck. First you got Chain of Smog and Witherbloom Apprentice. The way this works, because Witherbloom Apprentice has Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent will lose 1 life and you'll gain 1 life. Chain of Smog is this neat little ability. Target player discards 2 cards from his or her hand. That player may copy that spell and may choose a new target for that copy. So we're going to copy Chain of Smog, targeting ourselves over and over again. Witherbloom Apprentice will do the job from there, killing our opponents. Next we have Exquisite Blood and Veto Thorn of the Dusk Rose. So Exquisite Blood, whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life, and Veto says whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. They work perfectly with each other, causing an infinite loop. You are going to lose all of your life. And the kind of midway combo between Storming Off and Life Gain, Life Drain. We got Bolas' Citadel, Sensei's Divining Top, and Aetherflux Reservoir. So starting with Aetherflux, whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 life for each spell you've cast this turn, pay 50 life, it deals 50 damage to target creature or player. Then we got Sensei's Divining Top. You look at the top 3 cards of your library, put them back in any order, but the most important one is to draw a card, then put Sensei's Divining Top on top of its owner's library. And what holds it all together? Bolas' Citadel. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may play the top card of your library. If you cast a spell this way, you pay life equal to its converted mana cost rather than paying its mana cost. Sacrifice 10 land permanents. Each opponent loses 10 life. So the way this works is you're constantly going to be going off the top of your deck with Bolas' Citadel, casting cards. Aetherflux Reservoir is eventually going to turn the life loss from Bolas' Citadel into life gain. And with Sensei's Divining Top, anytime you come up with a land, you can just draw that land, put the top on top, pay 1 life, and then go again. This is going to work well with all of your storm combos, and eventually it's going to get you enough life to just ping all of your opponents with Aetherflux for game. So now that we got all the combos out of the way, let me show you how you get to them. Starting off with the tutors, we got Demonic Tutor here. Search your library for any card, put it into your hand. Next we got Diabolic Intent. You are going to sacrifice a creature, but you get to search your library for a card and put that in your hand, just like Demonic Tutor. Then we have Grim Tutor. You search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library at the cost of 3 life. Next we got Worldly Tutor. You can search your library for a card and reveal that card, specifically a creature, put it on top, instant speed. And then you got Eldritch Evolution. You're going to sacrifice a creature, and then you're going to search your library for that card with mana value X +2. And then you're going to put it directly into play rather than into your hand. This will get any of the combo piece creatures that we need, or any creatures that we need whenever we need them. All right, now we're moving on to the token generation of the deck. Now that we've gotten the combos and the tutors out of the way, starting with Chatter of the Squirrel. You can create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token, and it's got flashback for 2, so it's very useful if you really need a token, even if it's in your graveyard. Then you got Chatterstorm. This has Storm as the mechanic. You can create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token. If you've been casting a lot of spells this turn, then Storm is really going to help you go off. You're going to create a lot of squirrels. Next we got Prosperous Innkeeper. When it enters the battlefield, you create a treasure token. That's perfect for Chatterfang. And then whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life. It's a great way to keep yourself up with the huge army that you're going to be making. Gallagreeters, 2-drop Elf Druid. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, choose one that hasn't been chosen yet. You can either put a +1/+1 counter on Gallagreeters, create a tapped treasure token, or you gain 2 life. This is great synergy with Chatterfang, because usually when you cast a creature and you make a token, you can choose to create a treasure token and gain yourself 2 life. It's not impossible to get all 3 of these off in one go. Next we have Bitter Blossom. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life, and you create a 1/1 Black Fairy Rogue creature token with flying. Every turn, it's a trigger for Chatterfang, making more squirrels on top of those fairies. Next we got Sedgemoor Witch. It's got Menace, Ward, paying 3 life to target it, and then it's got Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, you create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token. It's very useful, very good with storm decks. So next you got Ruthless Knave. Pay 3, sacrifice a creature, create 2 treasure tokens, and then you can sacrifice 3 treasures to draw a card. Interesting with Chatterfang is you can sacrifice 1 creature, make 2 treasure tokens, and then make 2 squirrels. So you're going to end up getting positive 1 squirrel, and redoing this cost over and over again basically just costs 1 instead of 3 if you're looping it correctly. So that's always really nice, especially if you got some death triggers in play, which you'll be seeing soon. Next we have Scoot Swarm. Landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you create a 1/1 green insect creature token. If you control 6 or more lands, create a token that's a copy of Scoot Swarm instead. This thing can get out of control real quick just by you playing the game, playing your land and passing. The amount of tokens that it makes is just unfathomable. It doubles constantly, and you're going to be making just as many squirrels with Chatterfang on the board. Speaking of more landfall, we got Tireless Provisioner now. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you create a food token or a treasure token. We're most likely just going to be creating treasure tokens, but whenever we need to gain life, it's there. Pitiless Plunderer. Whenever another creature you control dies, create a colorless treasure artifact token with sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. This is really good for creating a loop with Chatterfang because you can use the treasure maid to sack the squirrel maid to basically get rid of everyone's creatures, and if you have something like Blood Artist in play, this could be an infinite thing where you just kind of win the game that way. Sylvan Offering. This card was put in the deck basically just to say, let's put a lot of tokens into play really fast. You choose an opponent both times, and you either give them a Tree Folk or you give them X11 Elf Warrior creature tokens. You can be political with this if you need to, or if you don't want to get political, you should be making almost twice as many tokens as whoever you're giving them to, and you'll always have the advantage. Next we have Wolverine Riders. This is an awesome card. At the beginning of each upkeep, you create a 1/1 elf token, so that's going to be giving you a squirrel and an elf each turn. And whenever an elf enters the battlefield under your control, you're going to gain life, so it's nice to gain a little bit of life on top of that. Avenger of Zendikar. When it enters the battlefield, you create that many 0/1 green plant creature tokens, and then with Chatterfang, it's also going to be creating that many squirrels. Another landfall effect, where whenever you play a land, each plant you control is going to get a +1/+1 counter. Very nice. Belladross Witherbloom. It's got flying, and at the beginning of each upkeep, you create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token. You can pay 10 life, untap all lands you control, activate only once each turn. The untapping lands ability really comes in handy whenever you need it, but it's primarily there just to get Chatterfang to make more squirrels. Speaking of making more squirrels, one of the best ways to do that, Parallel Lives. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens on your side of the field, put twice that many of those tokens onto the battlefield instead. Doesn't matter which token you're making, if it's a token, it's going to get doubled. Then we got Second Harvest, does the exact same thing as Parallel Lives, but 1 time at instant speed, double all the tokens that you have in play, and then that's going to double with Chatterfang. Beastmaster Ascension, I primarily just put this in here because it just works really well with the deck. Whenever a creature you control attacks, you may put a quest counter on Beastmaster Ascension. As long as it has 7 or more, creatures get +5/+5. This deck makes tokens whether it likes to or not. You are constantly going to have an influx of bodies in play. Beastmaster really makes your opponent sweat and kind of forces them to look at this and remove it, lest they be overrun by the Acorn Horde. Next up, we got Bastion of Remembrance. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token, which is great for Chatterfang. It's also nice to say that whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent will lose a life and you'll gain a life. Again, a lot of the stuff in this deck wants you to kill your creatures for benefit, and this is one of the reasons why. Next, we got Weather the Storm. Gain 3 life and storm off. If you just happen to be casting a lot of spells and you just want to add this to the pile, it can gain you a crap ton of life. Next we have Dina, Soul Steeper. Just like Veto, it's really good as a combo piece. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. But it's also a really good sack outlet because you can sacrifice another creature and it'll get +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. Dina's awesome. Speaking of potential combo pieces, we are moving on to Blood Artist. Whenever Blood Artist or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Even if you don't have a winning combo set up, playing Blood Artist when you have a hefty board is really going to make people not want to wipe the board right away, because it's just going to be an incremental bonus to your life and it's going to kill them. Right, now it looks like we're moving on to the ramp in the deck. We got Birds of Paradise, simple, 1 drop, add 1 mana of any color. Goldvein Pick. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you get to create a treasure token. It's cheap to cast, it's cheap to equip, and thanks to Chatterfang having Forest Walk, it's very easy to find an opponent that's always going to make sure this goes off each turn. Ashnod's Altar, again, we want to be doing a little bit of sacrificing in this deck, right? So this way you can start ramping up and getting some death triggers on top of that. Sol Ring, classic, 1 mana, tap for 2. Talisman of Resilience, you can tap it to add a colorless, or at 1 damage you can add any color in Golgari. Next up we got Arcane Signet, pretty standard, 2 mana, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Jeweled Lotus, because Chatterfang is a 3-drop in mono green, Jeweled Lotus just gets him onto the field. Quick, simple, easy, thank you so much. And then you can spend the rest of your turn getting more creatures in play. Mana Crypt, who doesn't like Mana Crypt? Next you got Once Upon a Time. I have been putting these in pretty much all of my green decks lately. It's a spell that you can cast for free if it's the first spell you cast. If not, it's 2 mana at instant speed. You look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or a land card from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest at the bottom in any random order. Awesome card to get in your opening hand. Next we got 3 Visits. Search your library for a forest card and put it onto the battlefield. Sylvan Scrying, you search your library for any land card, reveal it and put it to your hand, and then shuffle. We have a lot of unique lands in this deck, so there's a reason for this, which you'll see coming up. Wild Growth, it adds an additional green to the mana pool whenever the land is tapped, and it's not as easy to remove as a creature. Very useful. Skull Clamp, all these squirrels and all these death triggers need to happen somehow. We might as well be drawing some cards for them. Thank you, Skull Clamp. You have been nothing but a godsend in this deck, and I recommend it to anybody who's using a token deck to play this game. Next up, I'll be showing you the draw section of the deck, starting with Plumb the Forbidden. 2 mana at instant speed is an additional cost to cast this spell. You may sacrifice 1 or more creatures. When you do, copy the spell for each creature sacrificed this way. You draw a card, and you lose 1 life. With all the tokens that we plan on making, this is going to draw you a lot of cards, and if you manage to get rid of pests rather than squirrels or anything else, you'll actually net 0 rather than lose a life, and you'll just end up drawing. Deadly Dispute, as an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice an artifact or a creature, draw 2 cards and create a treasure token. Great for Chatterfang, great for filling up the hand. Deadly Dispute's the way to go. Then we got Black Market Connections. This is a very versatile card, very new, pretty much replaces Phyrexian Arena in most if not all decks. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you get to choose 1 or more. You can create a treasure token by losing 1 life, you can draw a card by losing 2 life, or you can create a 3/2 colorless shapeshifter token by losing 3 life. So basically with Chatterfang, this says lose 6 life, draw a card, create 2 tokens, which create 2 squirrels. Fantastic. Next up, Vampiric Rites, 1-drop enchantment, you pay 2, sacrifice a creature, gain 1 life, and draw a card. Next you got Sylvan Anthem, not so much as a draw, but because of the token generation, it's going to be giving us that scry a lot, on top of giving green creatures a +1/+1. Moldervine Reclamation. This is one of the cards that really cares about creatures dying. Whenever they do, you gain 1 life and draw a card. Once this is in play, it's really easy to chain together a bunch of deaths, and I've drawn almost 20 cards off of this card before. Next, we're moving on to Removal, starting with Feed the Swarm. Destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls. You lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. Infernal Grasp. You destroy target creature and you lose 2 life at instant speed. Very nice. The Meathook Massacre. This is basically the only board wipe in the deck, but it's very synergetic with our life gain, life drain effects. When it enters the battlefield, creatures get -X/-X until end of turn, bypassing indestructibility. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you gain 1 life. If you've got a bunch of creatures in play and you want to wipe the board because someone else is getting bigger than you, this really turns the tides. Next up, we got Beast Within. Pretty straightforward. You destroy target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 beast creature token. Next up, we have Pest Infestation. Destroy up to X target artifacts and or enchantments. Create twice X 1/1 black-green pest creature tokens with when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. I like that it says up to, so you can dump as much mana as you want into this, and you don't have to worry about targeting your own artifacts or enchantments. You could just make all the pests that you need. Then we got Crack Open. Destroy target artifact or enchantment, and you get to create a treasure token. So if I'm going to be destroying stuff, I might as well be getting squirrels out of it, am I right? Next up, we have Morality Spear. The spell costs 2 less to cast if you gain life this turn. Destroy target non-land permanent. As you've been seeing, we have a lot of cards that can gain us life either by accident or very efficiently, so Morality Sphere is probably going to be costing 2 when we need it the most. Next we got Abrupt Decay. Abrupt Decay can't be countered by spells or abilities. Destroy target non-land permanent with CMC 3 or less. Its partner in crime, Assassin's Trophy. Destroy target permanent and opponent controls, but they get to search their library for a basic land card. Next up we have Deadly Brew. Each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. If you sacrificed a permanent this way, you may return another permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. I kind of just wanted to fill a removal slot in this deck. I know people get to choose which creature they sacrifice, but the added benefit of me getting to put something back into my hand is also pretty nice. Alright, so now we are moving on to protection. Good old Lightning Greaves. A creature has haste and shroud. So this is perfect for any piece that you have that you don't want to get destroyed, or if you want it to start attacking right away, Lightning Greaves is your boy. These next couple cards I specifically put in here knowing full well that I'm going to have a board full of tokens and I need to protect them from board wipes or removal. So starting up we have Golgari Charm. All creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn, or destroy target enchantment, or regenerate each creature you control. Destroying an enchantment is usually the way I'd want to go if I didn't need to regenerate each creature, but regenerating each creature definitely helps in a token deck. Then we have Heroic Intervention. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. This is great because not only does it count for your creatures or your tokens, but any artifact or enchantment or anything else that you have in play, as long as it's your permanent, it's going to be safe from any problems. And then we have Rapid Vigor. Just like Golgari Charm, it's going to regenerate each creature you control, preventing a board wipe from being your downfall. Then we have Tamio's Safekeeping. Target permanent you control gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, and you gain 2 life. The gain 2 life was just kind of synergetic with the life gain life drain we got going on right now. But, you know, protecting a singular creature from being removed is awesome. Then we got Destiny Spinner. Creatures and enchantments you control can't be countered. Target land you control becomes an XX elemental creature token with trample and haste, where X is the number of enchantments you control. It's still a land. We're primarily just looking at creature and enchantment spells you control can't be countered. This isn't a blue deck, but it always goes up against blue decks, so this is a great way to make sure that you can still play your game. We are going to end it off with the lands, starting with the duels. Next I got Bayou. It's a proxy, by the way, just letting you know, but I got Bayou. Then we got Command Tower. Darkmoor Pathway. Comes in untapped as either a swamp or a forest, depending on what you need. Overgrown Tomb. Pay 2 life. Comes into play untapped. Woodland Cemetery. As long as you control either a swamp or a forest, it comes into play untapped. Then you got Undergrowth Stadium. Comes into play untapped as long as you have 2 or more opponents, which in Commander you always will. Deathcap Glade. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more other lands. Necroblossom Snarl. As long as you reveal a swamp or a forest in your hand, you can play this untapped. So next we have Temple of Malady. It enters the battlefield tapped. There's no way to make it come into play untapped, but the fact that we get to scry one is always nice, especially in the early game. Then we got Tainted Wood. Taps to add a colorless, or we can tap to add a black or a green, as long as we control a swamp. Verdant Catacombs. You can pay 1 life, sacrifice it, and get any version of a swamp or a forest in the deck. So next we have Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth. It turns all lands into forests, which is great for Chatterfang because it's got Forest Walk, it can swing in. Great comboing with that axe from earlier that creates tokens as long as it does combat damage. This guarantees that everyone is a target. Its perfect counterpart, Orborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. The last one made everything forest, this makes everything swamps. And how could you have Urborg without the Cabal Coffers? Great way to ramp up in black. Then we have Gaia's Cradle. This is also a proxy, just because it's very expensive, but perfect in the deck. You're going to be making a lot of creatures, so this just makes it green for all of them. Next up we have Beseiju, Who Endures. Taps to add a green, or you can channel it. As long as Chatterfang's in play, it'll only cost 1 green, and it can destroy target artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land an opponent controls. Next up we have Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx. You can tap to add a colorless to your mana pool, or you can pay 2 and choose a color, and it'll add equal to your devotion. Because we have a lot of black and a lot of green, this is going to go off very quickly and very easily. Fabled Passage, the Rich Man's Evolving Wilds. You sacrifice it and search your library for a basic land and enters the battlefield tapped, unless you have 4 or more lands in play, in which case it comes into play untapped. Then you got Field of the Dead. It basically is landfall, create a zombie token whenever you have 7 or more lands of different names. High Market comes into play untapped. You sacrifice a creature, you gain 1 life. Very good if you need to be doing that in a pinch. Westvale Abbey. You can pay 1 life and make a 1/1 white and black human cleric creature token and put it onto the battlefield, or you can pay 5, sacrifice 5 creatures, and transform Westvale Abbey into Ormondal, the Profane Prince, which has flying, lifelink, indestructible, and haste. Always fun to see this guy come into play. So next up we have Reliquary Tower. As you can imagine, with all the draw power that this deck has, it can go out of hand really quick. Reliquary Tower means that I don't have to waste anything. Then we got Ancient Tomb. It's like Soul Ring, but on land. Add 2 colors to your mana pool, but it does do 2 damage to you when used. And then finally we have 1, 2, 3, 4 forests, and 1, 2, 3, 4 swamps. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. All my socials are linked in the description below if you want to follow me and keep up to date with everything EDH outside of YouTube. If you're thinking about making this deck or just want to use it for inspiration, I've included a link to the deck list below as well. Thanks again for watching, and stay foil.